My next guest wants you to be more intentional about a sometimes forgotten relationship in your life, and that is the relationship you have with your siblings. She says adult sibling relationships are overlooked but very important. We grow up with these people. We share experiences. We share family culture, but those bonds often dwindle in adulthood. Studio 5 parenting contributor Heather Johnson is going to help us avoid that. I love that we're talking about this, and I can't remember a time on this show in all of its 17 years that we have, but they are important, and you're underscoring that. Why are adult sibling relationships so crucial?
Well, I mean, we've got to start with the fact that they will most likely be the longest running relationship we have in our entire lives. We don't ever take a step back and think about that, right? So if my brothers and I are born a few years apart, we have our entire lives together, and yes, we're with our parents, but once our parents pass away, we still have more life to go.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter what other relationships we have, spouses, parents, even friends, right? We go back to, oh, we've been friends since elementary school. Well, guess what? For most of us, we were already siblings by then.
We were, siblings
we were
since birth.
already friends, right? And had those relationships with our siblings. So that's the first reason. This is the longest lasting relationship that a lot of us are going to have. And that's really important. They're also the most under-attended relationships. We don't give energy to them. We don't think about them. We naturally assume, well, we're bound, we're siblings. So that's just going to run itself. But
and
it
there are other relationships that I could argue demand more of my time or deserve more of my attention.
And are right in front of us, right? Again, we rely on the fact that because we're blood, because we're siblings, it will always be there, that's not the case. The other reason why these are so important is because all of us sit around with our kids and say, we want you guys to be friends when you're adults. We want our kids to be friends.
Oh, it's a huge goal of mine.
It is a huge goal. You want them to be friends. You want them to all gather back at our house, and do things together. And we really want that. And what we've found is the relationships that we have as parents with our adult siblings do have a huge impact on how close our children will be when they're adults. And that is worth taking note of. We even know it goes a step further. Fathers in particular, who have close relationships with their siblings when they're adults, are more likely to have kids who have close relationships when they become adults.
Specifically fathers.
Specifically fathers. Now, both parents matter.
Of course.
But even dads,
interesting.
That reaches a little bit of a higher point there. So we want to step back and go, okay, this does matter. It matters for us, but this matters for the generation that we're also raising.
And I think of the potential need. I mean, you think of this loneliness epidemic that we've labeled that our society is apparently in, which is so sad to think about. You think of this desire for understanding that people have and this craving they have for connection. And, we say it's not built in, but there are some bonds that are there if we just strengthen them and grab hold of them. And that's what you want to help us do today. You say first we have to stop blaming our circumstances.
We do, and the circumstances we were raised in. A lot of the contention comes when we're adults with our siblings because we're still blaming circumstances. For example, I'm an oldest child. I have 2 younger brothers. So naturally, as an oldest child, when I'm born, my parents are both in school, and my dad's just starting out in a career. All of those circumstances are going to impact financial situations. So then I've got younger brothers. When they're born, our financial situation is different, right? And we're very quick to look at those as adults and say, you got more than I did, or you got to take more fun vacations with mom and dad than I did. We start to compare and we look at these circumstances, whether we're born really close together, whether we shared a room, those are circumstances. A huge one that we blame is shared hobbies. Oftentimes we don't realize that there are kids who have hobbies in common with their parents different than their siblings do. But we look at that and go, you were always trying to take mom away from me. Or mom liked you more than she liked me. When really the circumstances are, you and mom just both liked the same thing. And so we blame these circumstances often. We have to stop blaming these circumstances.
Yet at the same time, you say we have to accept different narratives. And what I interpret that to mean is, we grew up in the same house, but we may have seen things very differently.
In fact, we most likely will see things very differently. And this brings in more contention if we're not careful. We've been sitting around and all of a sudden a memory comes up and a sibling shares, this is how I feel it went. And we're sitting there going, mom and dad didn't do that. That's not how this went. That's not what I did. That's not what you did. You're remembering that wrong. And all of a sudden, we're so about making these narratives be the same, when really all we have to do is understand the narratives. We don't have to agree on them. My brothers had a completely different experience growing up, even though in my mind, our parents did the same thing and they would say the same about me. Not because anything was done wrong. We just are different people, so we naturally see things differently.
We know, and you've taught us over the years, that good relationships are formed through intentional effort. How, Heather, can we be more intentional with our adult siblings, recognizing we've got a lot of other important relationships to tend to as well?
We do. It's deciding that you care about this relationship. When we say intentional, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you have to live as next door neighbors and you're having Sunday dinner with them every single week. That's not what we mean. It's taking your circumstances and taking what you want this relation to look like and finding ways to put energy into it. Here's the thing, the opposite of being intentional is entropy. It's a steady disintegration of something. And so if we're not being intentional, the only other option is that it's falling apart.
It's one or the other.
It is. And so that's why it's so important to be intentional. So the way I look at my brothers and the way we've navigated this, we live in different places. We are all married, we have kids, we have jobs, we're busy. Every year, though, we're very intentional about getting together to run what's called a Spartan Ultra Beast. It is this nonsense of a race. Well, it's not really nonsense. It's the hardest thing I do all year long, except when I had children and birthed them. And we get together. We've done it everywhere from South Carolina to Utah over and over. We're running Montana this year.
Look at you guys.
And we come together and we talk all year about it.
Yeah.
And we're very, very intentional about getting together to do this one thing.
I love it.
It's a full day, and it is so fun. They hoist me over walls that I will never be tall enough to get over myself. We work together, but we have to be very intentional about it.
About making it happen.
About making it happen. But the cool thing is intentionality, it then breeds memories. And now we have these memories that we carry with us. It's connected us. So it is being very, very intentional about these relationships. We have to be, or they fall apart.
I love it. We've got 1 minute left. You want us to worry about who I want to be, who you want to be in this relationship.
Opposed to who they're becoming or who they are. We're quick to compare, to feel jealousy, to worry about how they do it. Oh, we were together at Christmas, and my brother did this, or my sister did that, or even better, his wife did this, right?
There it is.
And we have to step back and go, regardless of what our siblings do, what type of sister do I want to be at this age in our relationship? I have to show up that way. I need to work to create a narrative in my mind that allows me to be in these relationships in a healthy way. And we want to do whatever that takes, right? Whatever that takes. And it has to start with us deciding how we want to show up, no matter how we're treated or no matter what is done. And it's also realizing that there will be ups and downs in these relationships as adults, just like there were as kids. There will be times when we're tighter or when we're looser. There'll be times when there's more energy and when there's less. It doesn't have to mean that we have to be distant. It simply means we decide, you know what, a little more intentionality or a little bit less, depending. It really is recognizing that these relationships, there's memories tied to them that are so, so powerful. Why would we want that to stop? Why not let that continue throughout the years? It's the longest relationship we're gonna have, so it deserves our energy.
I love this topic. As I started the conversation, is how I'll end the conversation. I love this so much, in part, I'm sure, because I benefit from the strong relationship you described, but also because what you said just makes sense. We need those connections. Heather, thank you so much. Heather has a private practice. You can contact her through our Studio 5 website.